Hello, Namaskar and Adab to all my friends from your friend astrologer and guide Irfan, once more with you from your very own channel Astro Assurance. In the series of planets in the nakshatras of other planets, we have already done the placement of Rahu in the nakshatras of other planets, and we have also talked about Venus place in the nakshatras of other planets. Here we are not talking about the placement of planets in individual nakshatras, but we are talking about a planet placed in the nakshatra of other planets. For example, if you are looking at the nakshatras of Ketu, so we are not talking about a planet placed in the individual nakshatras such as Ashwini or Magha or Mula for Ketu. Here we are talking about when a planet goes into the nakshatras of any specific planet. So if a planet goes into either Ashwini or Magha or Mula, then at a 40,000 feet level, what are the generic characteristics of such a planet's potential, its possibilities, and what results it can give us. So the levels of finding out the deeper meaning of a planet starts with which sign it is in, then which house it is in. Even deeper level is it is placed in the nakshatra of which planet, and then even deeper is which specific nakshatra it is in. The deepest, the ground level analysis is about whether it is in a conjunction, whether it is in a specific aspect, what dignity it is in, what degrees it is in, and so on. So only when we are able to look at all of these levels, while looking at the ground level, what dignity the planet is, only then can we look at and sculpt the actual meaning and the manifestation of the planet. So keep this in mind. So today we will be talking about the planet Mercury when it is placed in the nakshatra of other planets, then what kind of results it may give. Now let's start with Mercury in the nakshatra of Sun, which is Kritika, Uttara Falguni and Uttara Ashada, and these have the fire and the earth energies. So when Mercury goes into any of these nakshatras which are ruled by the Sun, especially because these nakshatras have either the fire or the earth energies or a mix of these energies, so such a person, when you take into account the energies of Mercury, this person will be very intellectual, this person will be very intelligent, but will also be a thinking person, will be very good in his or her communication, and will also bring in the qualities of the Sun, which is about ownership, responsibility, accountability, leading from the front, a person who stands up to his or her pride, his or her self-respect, and will be doing work in line with these qualities. So Mercury in the nakshatras of the Sun, which means that such a person will be very intellectual, thinking at the same time will also think through pragmatically, but with a lot of ownership, lot of accountability, lot of responsibility, and not hesitate to take the leadership in a certain situation. But because of having both the fire and the earth energies, such a person will do any task with a lot of motivation, but will also stand by resolute with his or her decisions because of the earth energy. So a person who is a thinking person, an intellectual, takes responsibility, takes accountability for his or her action, yet at the same time is very resolute in how he or she wants to achieve, and at the same time will do that with a lot of motivation and willpower is this placement. This person, before they take accountability and responsibility, will think through deeply, will look at different angles, will look at different connections, will look at and weigh the pros and cons of a decision before they take a decision. But once they take a decision, they will put in a lot of hard work, they will put in a lot of energy, and they will dedicate a lot of enthusiasm and the intellectual capacity and a lot of logic before they take a decision. So usually the output of such a project, such an action, is a completion with dedication, with responsibility, with accountability, and the true mark of a thinking leader. And that is the placement of Mercury in the nakshatras ruled by Sun. Now when Mercury goes into the nakshatras which is ruled by itself, which is Mercury goes into the nakshatras ruled by Mercury. Now all the nakshatras of Mercury have the water energies, and these three nakshatras are Ashlesha, Jyeshtha and Revati. Of these, the Ashlesha and Jyeshtha nakshatras can be a little tricky. However, the best results can be sought in the Revati Nakshatra. Now, Mercury itself is a planet of logic, thinking ability, logic, communication, pragmatism, weighing pros and cons, and now going into the nakshatras also ruled by itself, which means double the enthusiasm, double the intellect, double the pragmatism, double logic. So a very thinking through person, a very complete person, and a person who will not be easy to convince himself also very easily. So this person will take time to be convinced. We look at all sides of the story, we look into every nook and corner, we look at every data point before he or she arrives at a decision. And even when they take a decision, their ability to communicate will be of a person who is very pragmatic, very logical person. And in the person's influencing ability, you will be able to see the sharp-sightedness of Mercury, the piercing ability of a complete thought-through decision, a pros and cons weighed through decision, and somebody who will be pragmatic and will not allow emotions to get the better of them. Even when sometimes they take emotional decisions, for example in the relationship also, there too they will be pragmatic. They will also look at whether this relationship will suit both me and the other person in the long run, whether this project will also be feasible for me as well, for others also, for whoever I am doing this project. If they are working in a team, they will also weigh the pros and cons, whether X person or Y person will fit into the team well or not, and whether it is practical and logical to be able to take the person or not. Otherwise, this person will not decide in favor of that project or the relationship or that particular person. So a person who is very, very cool-headed will think twice before they take a decision. For them, the completion of the project is very important, the long-term stability of the relationship is important, and the success of the project, the relationship, of the action is important, is the placement of Mercury in the nakshatras ruled by Mercury. Now Mercury placed in the nakshatras ruled by Venus. All these nakshatras have the fire energy. These nakshatras are the Bharani Nakshatra, the Purva Falguni Nakshatra, and the Purva Shada Nakshatra. So here you will be able to see the combined influence of the thought-provoking, the intellectual, the pragmatic, the logical orientation of Mercury, and at the same time the softness, the high quality, the intimacy orientedness, the attraction, the materialistic fervor, and the richness that Venus will bring into their decision making. So such a person will be a very thinking person, but on material lines. This person will look at, is there an overall fruits of labor for everybody? Does everybody gain in this equation? Will everybody gain through this project? Will everybody gain through this relationship? Is it good? So when they make choices also, these choices will be rich choices, gain oriented choices. Even if they want to get into a relationship, they will think through whether all the requirements of the relationships are being met in this equation. So if they get into a relationship, they will want to be with somebody who's presentable, good looking, also comes from a good background. They may not be very rich, but they will surely want somebody who's more sophisticated, somebody who may not use very flowery language, but also is not very curt, is not very crass. So the person will be looking at and making decisions which are both material, gain oriented, yet at the same time there will be a lot of love, there will be a lot of affection, there will be a lot of richness, there will be a lot of softness, and so these decisions will be quality decisions and long-term decisions, stable decisions. But the biggest stamp on this particular equation is that the decisions should be logical and gain making for everybody concerned. So even in the influencing abilities, in their communication, you will be able to see the flavor which Mercury brings in with its logical interpretation of areas of thoughts, of actions, of relationships. At the same time, Venus's impression or Venus's stamp of authority of love, affection, intimacy, and gains overall will come through. So when somebody is trying to convince with this equation, you will be able to see that this person is talking about both practicality and gains for everybody. So a good placement, especially if it goes into the Bharani Nakshatra, of lot of material gains, thought through decision making, through logical decision making with practicality, is the presence of Mercury in the nakshatras ruled by Venus. Now when Mercury goes into the nakshatras ruled by moon, now when Mercury goes into the nakshatras ruled by moon, all these nakshatras have a strong earth energies, and these nakshatras are the Hasta Nakshatra, the Rohini Nakshatra and the Shravana Nakshatra. So here this combination is about somebody who is very pragmatic, very logical, very intellectual, yet at the same time they have a very understanding approach to relationships, to projects, or through any actions or any decision they need to take. So even while being very pragmatic, very practical, they will also look at the softer sides, at the emotive sides, at the nourishing sides, at the supporting sides of others. If a decision is very logical, yet it is at the cost of somebody's emotions, it is at the cost of relations, it is at the cost of somebody else's need or somebody else, then they will think through twice before taking a decision. So these people will generally take a decision only when it is supportive, it is nourishing, it is helpful of others, it is also bringing solace to others, gains to others, the feeling of balance, the feeling of understanding, the feeling of helping others. So a person who in their decision making, in their communication, in their ability to influence others, and even in how they project themselves, come across as a logical person, thinking person, pragmatic person, but also somebody who will help others, support others, take care of others, will be very understanding without sacrificing their own needs, is the placement of Mercury in the nakshatras ruled by the moon. Now Mercury going into the nakshatras ruled by Mars, these nakshatras have the earth and the air energies, and these nakshatras are the Mrigashira Nakshatra, the Chitra Nakshatra and the Dhanishta Nakshatra. So because of having the earth and the air energies and nakshatras ruled by Mars, such a person is very resolute in his or her action, and once they take a decision, it's not easy for them to fall back on. So firstly, because of Mercury's influence, these decisions are very thought through. These decisions are taken into account with looking at both pros and cons, looking at even the finer pieces of data, of information, looking deeply whether a decision makes sense or not, and very goal-oriented decisions because of Mars nakshatras being involved. But once they are thought through decisions, logical, looking at all angles, when once a decision is made, keeping a goal in mind, these are not the people who will let go of a goal easily, even if it's very a tough goal to achieve. So even in a relationship, these people will not let go of a relationship at the drop of a hat. They will look deeply into before getting into a relationship, and the same thing will also be if they think they want to get out. When they think through deeply that this decision is not right for me, this relationship is not right for me, this project is not right for me, when they are thought deeply and they feel it is not pragmatic enough, not practical to remain in the relationship, to remain in the project, then they will not hesitate to back out of the project also, and they will also be very resolute in the actions while still being flexible, while allowing the room to maneuver, the room to compromise, yet they will be very resolute when they take their decisions. So a person who comes across as a very motivated person, somebody who is very goal oriented, somebody who is very ambitious in how they want to do things, an achiever, has very high energy, but at the same time a deep thinking person, a high energy person, but at the same time very resolute person, wanting to help others, wanting to make gains for everybody else, but who doesn't hesitate if they find a decision is not practical, is not pragmatic, to take a step back, is the placement of Mercury in the nakshatras ruled by Mars. Now Mercury in the nakshatras ruled by Jupiter, which has air and water energies, and placed in the nakshatras of Punarvasu, Vishakha and Purva Bhadrapada. So here, if Mercury goes into the nakshatras of Punarvasu, then this can also be a very rewarding experience for the person, though it can be slightly tougher when it goes into the nakshatra of Vishakha. However, having the Jupiter energies and also having air and water energies, which means this person can also be very fluid, very flexible in how they take a decision. So firstly, somebody whose thinking ability is very strong because of Mercury's influence, very pragmatic person, very practical person, and takes a decision after due thought. And when the decision is taken in the light of what is helpful to others and whether this is wise in the long term. So even at the cost of immediate losses or not big gains immediately if a person finds that the gains can be long term, and this is a better or a more wiser decision which can be good for everybody in the long term, then such a decision is taken by the person who has Mercury in the nakshatras ruled by Jupiter. So this person will think through long and hard, look at different corners, different data points, will also look at different people's motivations, different people's needs, and they will take wise decisions where nobody can call them wrong in the long run. So sometimes the decision that they take may in the short term not come across as very correct to people, or many people may not even understand them, but long term people will agree that these decisions were the best for everybody. And because of the air and especially the water energy, such a person is also very flexible in the approach, because a wise person will always be. So even while knowing that a decision is very pragmatic, it's very practical, yet at the same time the wisdom tells them that it is always better to be flexible, it is always better to fall back on hindsight and be able to even change a decision when the time comes. So a very thinking person, a wise person, a person who will also be a good counselor, also good guide, and somebody who gains a lot of information very easily, can also get a lot of educational qualification also easily if they put their mind to it. So a very thinking person, a wise person who thinks before they talk, and a guru, a true master in their own right, yet at the same time flexible enough, and somebody who thinks long term wise decisions for everybody's gains, is the placement of Mercury in the nakshatras ruled by Jupiter. Now when Mercury goes into the nakshatras ruled by Saturn, these have the water energies, and these nakshatras are the Pushya, the Anuradha, and the Uttara Bhadrapada nakshatras. Of these, if Mercury goes into the nakshatra of Pushya, then this can be extremely gain bringing energies to this combination, while it can be slightly tricky in the Uttara Bhadrapada nakshatra. However, being placed in the nakshatras ruled by Saturn, so here stability is a very important concern for such a person. Mercury brings in the energies of pragmatism, practicality, intellectual decisions, thought through decisions, somebody who's good at weighing the pros and cons and then taking decisions, whereas Saturn brings in the stability. So a person who thinks long and hard, does not rush into any decision making, and only when they see that it also serves everybody, especially the people who are most concerned, those people who can get the biggest losses, and takes care more of their team, immediate team, rather than large gains for themselves. A true people's person, a true team worker is this placement, who will not even kill a fly because they feel this is not good for others, even if it's at their own cost. A person who is banking on stability, long-term stability, and will be ready to work very hard with a lot of commitment and dedication, but with a lot of structure. So a person who thinks long and hard, who has strong plans in place, who thinks through different angles and takes a decision, and then is not only the decision maker but is also a worker who will not hesitate to get his or her hands dirty and get on the floor to be able to work with others, and doing more than others, contributing more than others. And even in the relationship, these people will be the one who give more, yet will also want stability in the relationship, even when they know that they get less from the opposite party, because for them commitment, dedication, loyalty is the key to relationship, and that is the way that everybody gains in the long term. So a person who is usually cool minded, has a very cool approach, a thinking approach, stable approach, and we look at all the sides and not take a decision which is at anybody else's cost, and stability, structure, organization and commitment and loyalty is the foundation of their decision making, is the person with Mercury in the nakshatras ruled by Saturn. Now when Mercury goes into the nakshatras ruled by Rahu, which all the nakshatras have the air energies, and here the nakshatras are the Ardra Nakshatra, the Swati Nakshatra and the Satabhisha Nakshatra. Out of these, if Mercury goes into the nakshatras ruled by Ardra, then this can be slightly tricky placement for the individual. Here the person can be very pragmatic, very logical. However, in the nakshatras of Satabhisha and in the Swati also to a large extent, this person can also be a healer, a problem solver, extremely innovative person. So when Mercury goes into the nakshatras of Rahu, This is a person who thinks through hard, deeply, and looks at gains long term, but is also looking at gains and big gains, large gains, and is not ready to bid lot of time endlessly for decisions to come good. This person wants to take pragmatic decisions, logical decisions, where the gains can be seen in the near future and not long term. This person wants their decisions to come good immediately. Gains can be seen immediately in the near future, and good gains could come through the decisions. Large gains can come to the person, and the person can see growth, visible growth, and for that the person is ready to put in all hard work, is ready to go be more tactful, ready to also bend rules here and there. But this is an extremely intelligent person, extremely clever person, and if this person wants to, this person can be extremely manipulative also. And so if there is a benefic aspect on this, this is one of the biggest achievers that the world can see. However, if there are more malefics involved in this equation, then God save anybody when such a person wants to become your enemy or wants to take you to task. Some of the most analytical people, some of the most thinking philosophers who have been able to answer the biggest questions in life, who have been able to bring in the biggest innovations in life, some of the most financially astute people, most pragmatic people, some of the best scientists, thinking philosophical people is this placement. So if somebody has Mercury in the nakshatras of Rahu, if they are able to use their energies well, if they are truly pragmatic and they don't make unreasonable dreams which are beyond their class, and they are able to also balance the hunger and greed of Rahu with the more practical, pragmatic decisions of Mercury. So this is the placement of one of the biggest achievers that the world can see, that the world can get, as long as the decisions are more logical rather than materialistic. And that is the placement of Mercury in the nakshatras ruled by Rahu. Mercury placed in the nakshatras ruled by Ketu. All these nakshatras have a strong fire energy, and these nakshatras are the nakshatras of Ashwini, Magha or Mula. Of these, Ashwini can give somebody great healing powers, problem solving powers, but these powers are given to you more for others, to become a healer for others. However, if it goes into the nakshatra of Mula, these people can also face a lot of challenges, a lot of problems in their life, and only because of strong intellectual ability, pragmatism and practicality, they are able to rise from the ashes like a phoenix. And generally with this placement, your intellect, your pragmatism is more for others, to solve problems for others or to solve large problems for the society rather than yourself. And so usually these are the energies of we rather than me. So here the person usually thinks about the couple together rather than only self, can think about the entire family rather than self, will think about the community rather than self, will think about the team and the project rather than self. So usually such people with Mercury placed in the nakshatras of Ketu will find that they end up doing more for others, and others gain more out of their enterprise, others gain more out of their hard work, others make more gains out of their pragmatism, the practicality, and gains come to them, growth come to them, and profits come to them last. So the zodiac has given the intellect to you, the practicality to you, the thought-provoking, deep-rooted analysis for you to be able to do more for others. So a tougher placement for individual gains, for own materialistic profits, but this is also because the person himself is not the most selfish person, in fact the most selfless person. So if you are able to balance this placement where you are also able to look a little bit more selfishly for yourself while doing more for others, this can be one of the best placements as the problem solver, as a healer, as the biggest contributor that the society or the world has seen. That is the placement of Mercury in the nakshatras ruled by Ketu. So now friends, now that we have seen Mercury placed in the nakshatras or different planets, see where your Mercury is placed, in which planets, nakshatra it is placed, which houses it is placed, what sign it is placed in, what dignity it is placed in, what yogas or doshas it is placed in, what aspects it is placed in. Based on that, overall come to the conclusion what your Mercury means and be able to use the practicality for your and for society's gains. So friend, like this video, share this video, and if you're looking for a personal consultation from me, please reach out to me at the link given below. Till some other time with some other video, this is your friend astrologer and guide Irfan signing off.